Good afternoon. Today is November the 4th. It is about 1:40 p.m. We are here at another collective bargaining session between the City of Lamarque and the Lamarque Police Officers Association. Certainly, we thank the Lamarque Police Officers Association for working with us in good faith. You all have done a tremendous job in this negotiation, and you all certainly have been negotiating with us in good faith. I can attest to that. You all have made sacrifices. You've worked with us to try to do what's best for our citizens, and I personally thank you for that. And I can say to you that that is the sentiment of our entire council. We know that you all are working. We know that you all are negotiating in good faith, and we intend to do everything in our power to assist you with everything that you need in order to keep our city and our citizens safe. So again, thank you for your efforts. Certainly those efforts won't go unnoticed and unrewarded. So at this time, I think we need to refresh by reintroducing ourselves, because we have a new member of our negotiating team. And so we want to acknowledge, and certainly Officer Harp is here as a new member of the police negotiating team. So we want to refresh for those that are listening, all the persons involved. And so I am Keith Bell, and I'm the mayor of the city of Lamarque.
Randall Aragon, police chief, and interim city manager.
Gus Knable, the city attorney, and as the mayor has mentioned, Chief Aragon has now been appointed last Monday as the interim city manager with Chase Carey's recent departure to the city of Dickinson. That's why he's here today.
Gilberto Rodriguez, President, Lamar Police Association.
I'm John Kerr with the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas.
Calvin Harp, Lamar Police Officers Association.
Very good, very good. Patty Reese is our human resources director here, and so she is here to take notes and to offer any expertise as it relates to our human resources department. As we both know, both sides know, Gus Knable is our lead negotiator, and so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Knable.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So also Susie Koo is on the line. She is the finance director for the city of Lamarque and assists us with any financial issues that are presented to us. Start with, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about rates. And I understand at the last meeting, we had agreed and did send our spreadsheet over of how the rates are calculated and what those costs are to the city. And I know the police union and Mr. Kerr had a chance to digest that and wanted to talk to us about that. Before we get there, though, the police union has presented specialty pay and assignments pay to us. There hasn't been a lot of talk about that. I want to talk about that now. First of all, dealing with Section 9, the assignments pay, the investigator pay. Well, I guess first of all, and I believe this has been going, we've had a couple of sessions, so I just want to confirm with Mr. Kerr here, our understanding and his understanding that this assignments pay is based on a management right. If the chief of police assigns an officer to one of these assignments, that's what would trigger that pay. And so that's the first thing. Moving on to the assignments themselves, the investigator pay and the special response team pay of $200 a month to the city. The accident reconstruction team, in discussions with Chief Aragon, what the city is really focusing on is crime prevention. And while accident reconstruction is an important part, that's not something that we want to do at this time. But as I said, what a big part of the city's position here is crime prevention and community outreach. Given that the $200 an hour not an hour, $200 a month that was proposed for the community-oriented policing assignment, the city would like to raise that to $300 a month with the union's approval, of course. I don't necessarily foresee that being an issue, but That's what the city would propose to do with the assignments pay. Moving toward to
Can I-
that,
Can I add a couple
Sure,
questions on that
absolutely.
particularly?
absolutely.
So, refresh me what you just said about specialty pay.
Oh, this was assignments pay.
Okay, well, prior to that was the specialty pay.
Oh,
And I think you and I had an email exchange. We talked about, removing that from, if need be, to allow for funding for others. So
yeah, no,
we're not
we're,
opposed to that. Want to make sure that we
Yeah,
have that
we're-
in mind.
yeah.
Because I have an alternative where we actually blue line that out like you and I had spoken.
yeah, no, we're happy to do that then, yes.
Okay. And so on the assignments pay.
Sure.
The city is concurrent with investigators' pay is appropriate. And community oriented policing, you want to propose $300.
Yes,
And let's make sure that we understand, we already had some essence from the budget that
Right.
this is something, and so we want to make sure that we immortalize it, and we're in concurrence that community oriented police officers put a lot of time in,
Right.
and so we're certainly good with that, but so, and special response,
we're good with 200 a month.
2 and 2.
Yes.
And 3.
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I want to make sure I had that down.
No, I appreciate it. Yes. Yeah, no. And then as we discussed, I mean, as far as the specialty pay, while we've definitely run some numbers there, we're happy if the police department would like to present your proposal regarding taking that money or reallocating that money. We're happy to hear that now.
And as you and I both know, this is something that both the chief and the association could explore if it was worthy, and it's something that the council can pass on any given council meeting, or because it is authorized by state civil service, so
Right.
it has to be funded and has to be authorized, and so this doesn't necessarily slam the door on that, because the chief may determine at some point in time and he would like to incent for some more training, and we could certainly, go along with that, and he's got a able-bodied president who'd love to have those types of conversations with him. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I think, and then I think that was all the,
section 10 also contains field training officer pay. It was something that we presented to you to increase $2.50 an hour, and you said you're waiting for your finance department to give you the cost on that, and that you wasn't necessarily opposed, but you want to make sure you knew what it costs. And so,
yeah, again, let me just check with her again, but I think we're gonna be good at that.
can we, if you don't mind, can we back up just a minute?
Sure.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to make sure it helps me keep this in order. But as part of that entire article that dealt with salaries and so forth, there were several issues that we laid in there. And it's not that they, in some cases, don't cost, but it was changes in the language. And since there has been a recent discussion with the president and and managers about the corporal's position and so forth. We had struck out former language in here that said effective on October the 1st, 2019, the rank of corporal was created. That has already been done, and so we were going to strike it out. But as you and I would advise, the council has an opportunity to add to the police department's authorized strength as they see fit with the recommendations of the chief, the request of the chief. So we don't necessarily believe it has to be in there, but that's one of the reasons we took it out. We know from point forward, the council may change the authorized strength. So, but there is some consideration that there are 4 corporals now and they're lawfully in the system and they'll be there. But we don't want anyone to feel like they're hampered where they can't add additional corporal positions now or in the future if the council saw fit to field a request from the chief because he felt like that position, he wanted another one or 2 more or whatever. So would we have a meeting of the minds? The statute says the council can have all you want.
Yes.
And would you be opposed to taking that out, or do you want to leave it in and
No,
have a
it,
minimum of 4 or?
yeah, no. If y'all, we have no problem with taking that language out.
You know, I'll address the next part as we talk about the pay and so forth, but another area that, and this comes in, like I said, in part, some of these provisions that we have added in and requested to be considered have to do with dialogue with police management and wanting to create the greatest opportunity for lateral transfer and that. So in section 2, we added to the lateral transfer some programming language that would allow some acceleration of pay. And so we just kind of like to know what you think about that from a standpoint. There's we accelerated and basically give the chief the opportunity to credit somebody who shows up with 5 years of former police service that's qualifiable. Instead of going to step D, that they go to step C, they would go start out, or he would have the authority to start them at step D, which is a little higher pay. And then also if a lateral transfer officer showed up for processing and had more than 10 years of service, and it's applicable, then they could be started at a higher level as well, which formerly was C, and we suggest, you know, step F, if you will. So we just like to know if you guys are believing that that's a step in the right direction for recruiting. Really doesn't have anything to do with those folks that are currently members of the unit. It has to do with recruitment and the quality of applicants and the ability to pay. So that since the chief's here, and you know, I know he was listening last time, but now you know.
Okay, so
I got your chief hat out.
Right.
I got so many hats. Okay, the first comment was for an officer with X number of years, and the second one was 1 or more years, basically.
Yes, sir. Currently, the contract language allows for, in your lateral transfer program that exists today, the opportunity to accelerate someone's pay based on the service that they come to your department with when you attract them. Formerly, the contract said that the person with 5 years would come in at step number C.
You recommend D.
And we're recommending that it be accelerated to step D, which is
5 years.
3.8% more, as I recall.
And what's the other one?
And then the next one had to do with people who had, you know, and there's kind of a breakdown with other service, 7 years and so forth. We're just saying a good benchmark would be if you come here with 5 years of service, we'll give you the 5-year mark pay. If you come here with 10 or more years of service, that we start you at the, you know, I say we have the ability to accelerate that. We think it's very important, you know, to make this city attractive and enticing. And like I said, these were kind of sidebar conversations we had with interim folks, and they felt like it was a step in the right direction. So if you come here and you choose to hire somebody that's a lateral and they have 10 years of service, then we would promote that they get pay accelerated to that level as well. And so
Mayor,
when we, you know, when we throw these things out to you again, you can actually see it. And
I think that's
that you're kind of I don't know what copies you have, but I could probably give you the exact copy we gave the city, because I always try to keep extras, but.
Yeah, no, that'll work.
Are you good with that, Gus?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, that's it, if the chief is good with it, I mean, any opportunity to allow to hire experienced personnel is helpful for everyone.
And then also we added this and it just make sure that, you know, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And I'm gonna look to the HR director to give you a nod or say no, but you know, we know, I know from dealing with many cities that there's also other issues, the accumulation of vacation time and so on and so forth. So we added to this so there'd be no error, that lateral transfer program officers will accrue all other benefits based on their original hire date with the city of Marque. So you don't automatically get more vacation, more seniority, all those things. And so that's just that last little hanging fruit to make sure that there's never a misunderstanding and someone shows up saying you owe me this. And so
What do they accrue then?
well, they're hired just like any other city employee to Marque on a day.
Start out
That
with-
day forward, they will accrue whatever denominations of sick leave is required, vacation time is authorized by council, any other benefit that you may have that's tenure based. Then that makes it abundantly clear that you're going to get it in advance and pay, and we love you, but you still have to earn your other benefits. just like the
It
others.
sounds very
Right.
reasonable.
Yeah,
And so that makes it fundamentally fair for all considered and
keeps
you
costs
would
down.
alleviate, because we're gonna be the person that someone tries to file a grievance with, so they owe me this. We want it to be perfectly clear that if you wanted to have more, we're okay with that. But I'm just saying that my experience in dealing with lots of municipalities, this is the norm.
Yeah, and I guess just so I'm clear, if we find somebody with 11 years experience under this lateral transfer program, they would start here making what a 10-year patrol officer, just pick that, make that rate. And then they would just for that, just for pay. And then for vacation, any other any other benefit, they will be treated as a first-year hire.
Yes, sir. And-
Okay, yeah,
And I don't know all the city's policies.
Right.
They're all mapped. If after you've been an employee for 5 years in Lamar, you get to celebrate your birthday off every year, there's all.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, and you know, as you well know, well, I'm supposed to have that too, but it doesn't say that. So we want to make sure that it's perfectly clear and it saves you and, you know, HR and everyone else whenever having to deal with those types of questions. It's perfectly clear and it doesn't, you know, lend itself to someone else's interpretation of what that we all wanted it to be.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. That works.
We also had one little, and I don't know that it has, I'm assuming it has been an issue in the past because it was brought up by the membership. But in section 6, that deals with the payment of shift differential pay. If you're working your normal shift and whatever that rate of differential is, and then you get held over, for instance, and you have to work another 4 hours into the next shift, which pays a higher shift differential. We want to make sure that you get whatever is assigned for that time frame is what you get paid. And I don't know, I think the argument from one of the members that brought this up was that they never knew. Some people got paid for it, some people didn't. It just kind of felt like whoever processed the payroll slip said, yeah. And so they kind of interpreted the rule the way they felt like at the time. So we want to make sure that it was clear one way or the other. And so I don't know that we're talking about a lot of money here or how often did it happen. But if you're a day shift person who gets held over at 7 o'clock and has to work till 11 at night, we think you should get paid that shift differential rate per hour, you know, as you would if you were assigned to that.
So the way it reads now is they get the shift differential for what they were working, not the one where they're going to.
Yeah, so
And
let's
now-
see, what it has been over the last 365 days, it has been done differently.
Yeah.
So it's been brought up by different officers, saying, well, I got paid for it at this rate, I didn't. And so we felt like it was an issue that needed to be addressed.
Okay, so they should get
And,
the shift differential, the shift they're actually going on to. Correct.
or that they're actually working. They would be
Well,
entitled, well, our shift diff only applies to the night shift. So if one of the day shift officers holds over from 6 to 10, which is all they're allotted for a 16-hour day, then they would get that 55 cents an
Right.
hour shifted
Yeah, that sounds good.
to.
That's reasonable. That's what it should be, I think.
And it sounds like at least some of the time, that's probably how it's working, and some of the time it's not working that way.
Right, because some of
Okay.
the officers didn't feel comfortable putting in for it because the way they were interpreting
Right.
how the contract was written, they
Right.
didn't want to put in for it and be told no, so they just opted not to put in for it.
Clarify
As to
that.
others did put in for it, so that just cleans up the language.
Yeah, should be. It's a good idea.
I'm prepared. Well, that pretty much, as far as that particular language article, that pretty much covers all the things that we had wanted to offer up to you, except for pay, and I'd like to address that as well, but it may not be the right moment. I don't know what else you have for us.
You know, I think that was the only thing outstanding, I believe. We didn't, the prior, I guess, and we can talk about it now or later, the document that I gave y'all last time, if y'all had any changes to it, or wanted to talk about it, I know, give y'all a chance to digest it with your membership if there were any
So
concerns.
we put together materials to, provide you guys to kind of immortalize our thoughts on it. I took the spreadsheet numbers. I'll say we took the numbers and we looked through them. And then we also, just to be sure, we had a meeting with our members and we got the pay stubs. And so basically we found a couple of anomalies in the numbers, and it may be because their anniversary date added time or whatever.
Right.
So we have a real-time assessment of what every member, their step, dates of rank and all the things that doesn't necessarily is consistent with what you sent us, plus or minus just a little bit.
Yeah, because you are right. Well, what we sent there was a small hole in it with anniversary dates for certain officers.
And as well, we have a couple too, but we just want to make sure that in the grand scheme of things, we're certainly not trying to pull one over on you and say it's $5,000 cheaper than it is. It's just that we did a factual assessment and found out what everybody's, that we could find out what their date of hire is. In some cases, literally their paycheck said they're at step such and such.
Right.
And so it's very, very close. And, in the grand scheme of a $2.8 million budget, $5,000 is not the end of the world, but we don't want anyone to think that we're not trying to do this 100%. So with that said, I'm going to give these to you guys and extra so you can make sure HR and your finance director has their very own copy. And of course, we got spreadsheets as well. So if I handed you all the right stuff, this will kind of be the culmination. And I'd like to do this visually if possible. And that's where I'd like to go ahead and if now is the time, we can give you a visual representation of what we're going to try to tell you here. Are we good with that?
Yeah, this is being streamed, so I just point that out. And this will be online.
Yeah, once he
Okay.
gets it up, so
Yeah, I said for purposes of the people's names, that's all.
and so
I'll put it up in 1 second.
now understand these were done a couple of days apart, and every time you're dealing with financial numbers, you run across that 2 cents. And so there may be a slight modification, but I tried to correct it both in the presentation so they match exactly. But Just as a small disclaimer, there, I found in one place where it was a penny different, and, you know, when you calculate that by 2,080 hours, obviously it's a couple of dollars. So, but for all intent purposes, this is exactly what I think you're gonna have to spend. So what we want to bring to your attention, and we've already discussed it, but basically the police association wants to illustrate to you the issue that exists currently within the police pay plan matrix that you have. We know that city council has already worked through the numbers in the budget, and they made provisions for a 2% across the board raise for all city employees for this upcoming year. And you know, I'm sure the city employees, but also the police officers are deeply appreciative of the council's efforts to try to make, you know, things improve. But there still exists an issue, and so we want to illustrate that so that everybody understands where it's coming from. And then we want to try to join with you, make a recommendation that will be our heartfelt attempt to help you resolve the problem that we think is a disincentive to officers. So right now there exists a promotional salary progression structure where the promoted ranks within the current police pay plans is really a disincentive to officers, and we believe needs to be remedied. And when you're talking about pay, the only remedy for pay, as we well know, is typically more pay or an adjustment of pay or market adjustments or whatever. And so when we talk about the ranks in the police department for police corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, these positions within our promotional positions, they require an increased level of proficiency. It's also required an increased level and added responsibilities, which is the whole premise of being promoted. And the classification requires increased levels of supervisory responsibility over subordinate employees. Now, you know, the chief can weigh in on this anytime he wants to, but the prevalent police pay practices across the state tend to model promotional salary increases in the range of 5 to 10%. And you know, what it should be is an argument for another day. But I mean, if you Google it right now, I guarantee you get some management paper, TML, everybody else that would lay out some fundamental concept. And so if you're talking about, and the HR director's here, so you know, she can certainly nod or shake her head one way or the other. But when we talk about the executive supervisor levels, such as deputy chief and assistant chief, they conform to a little different standard, and their salary increase tends to be in the range of 10 to 20% higher because they're an executive staff person. And we believe that's the market, and that's what we all try to arrive at, being not lower than the market. It's a decision on the council whether you will be higher than the market, but we believe that police trend needs to be considered here. So the typical salary progression for all promoted ranks tends to also conform on that increased salary step level based on tenure or time that you spent in grade. And I know the mayor has vast experience at this as well. So, you know, tell me I'm wrong if you certainly think so. But our current pay plan structure follows that typical police matrix. But the problem lies in, when you compare it to the market analysis, the promotional levels are severely misaligned regarding rank progression with increased salary. And so that's what we consider. The fact that the council has already opted to, do across the board raise, we're extremely, positive and happy about that. But we've got to bring this to your attention. And if this comes across well, I had to superficially put things in here because the slide, won't work the way I wanted to. But what we want to do, just as an illustration, is give you a comparison of police officer step compared to corporal step. And you have in front of you, but basically down at the bottom, and this is your finance director numbering. So I used it because I figured this would resonate with everyone that has to finance this out. And so basically you got an officer with 15 years being the highest paid level. And then officer 1 was the officer 1 year, and then 3, 5, 7, they're all years of service. And then corporals are a little different in the sense that their initial promotional level is the one at the far right of the screen. And then after 3 years in grade, it switches C3, and then C5 is after 5 years of grade. So that's a progression. But I would draw your attention to the bar chart. that shows you that you've studied, you've taken the test, you've gone through the promotional process, and you're going to be at bare minimum assistant supervisor and supervisor subordinate officer. And it's illustrated here in this bar chart that there is a definite issue here. And so what we want, to provide you with is both a visual picture of what the problem is, so you clearly understand it. And then we want to work with you to try to resolve this. And we understand this is, as I said, to solve pay problems, it takes more money. And so what we'd like to do is the association wants to make a recommendation to the city team today that we resolve this problem in a cost-effective way, which benefits the city and the citizens and all the parties involved. But it's going to take a multi-step process because it costs a lot of money to fix it today. But if we break that into smaller bites and we take progression steps forward, the association would want you to know that they think they want to join with you to try to arrive at that conclusion and do so in such a fashion that gives you the ability to fund it and fund it gradually. So we would like to begin this year with this agreement. And we've already discussed this, and I don't know, there's been an absolute meeting of the minds and where we said, we told you that we respect the fact that you have an interim city manager and you now have a chief of police, but having multiple hats, I'm sure he's plenty busy. So we are at that juncture where we believe that we would join with you and accept a 1-year agreement, but we want to try to resolve this issue. And so we're saying that if we get a head start this one, and we try to make that a fundable initiative for you, then subsequent successor agreements, we can leverage that and take the next component part and fix this over time so that it's the least costly issue each year. And I'm sure if you had a full-time city manager and your finance director, they would tell you that's the best bet. And so that's what we'd like to submit to you. In the agreement that we're talking about under discussion, we appreciate the fact that you've already allocated 2% across the board, but we'd also suggest to you that we'd want to include market adjustments. And quite literally, this adjustment would be for 4 corporals, 3 sergeants. And the increased cost estimate, as we've laid it out in ballpark, would cost you an additional $22,000 and some change, or let's say $23,000 to be exactly can, as reflected in the data I'm about to show you. And you have that in front of you as well. So if you can squint your eyes and try to look at these small numbers that are about to show up, or you can look at them. This slide currently tells you what we have had. Fiscal year 2021, which ended September the 30th. This was the current and prevailing pay practice. And as you see, you have your office structure. Now I've removed the names because we're doing it public, but we literally got the information from the finance department, name by name by name. And so we went to the officers and we got the actual data. And so my chart here shows what their paycheck says. And there's going to be a little bit of deviation because, somebody might have had an anniversary date in here, but as you see how this works out. And this is every person that's on the department. Now, I think there has been a promotion, if you will, where one of the lieutenants may have been promoted to assistant chief, deputy chief. And so their name might have been in your copy, but it may not be their rank today. So with that said, you can kind of see how the rank structures, the hourly rates, the annual pay. And then if I think I know what these are, but since they were not labeled by the finance director, I merely used their formula and it added here. So the 173,000 at the bottom and 350, the 335, that was my attempt to emulate what they had already costed out for this budget. And give or take, they're the authority on the issue, not John Kerr. So, but just so you have a relative stint, and they can confirm or say it's a little bit too wrong or whatever. That's entirely the way this game works. But so whatever your budget is, we're at the opinion that it costs roughly about $2.7 million for payroll in the police department. And so that's our benchmark. That's what we're starting from. The next slide is my attempt to replicate what you just, what your council considered in its budget, which was a 2% across the board raise. And now, in this particular scenario, it tracks and it's in your copy, but you can't see it on the slide. But basically, if you could look at on the left-hand side, you see everybody's name and everything else. And so it's joined right there. And so this is, you know, what I'm sure your finance director and budget department, everything predicted out about what it would cost. And so it's an additional amount of money, and this is what we think it comes out pretty close to be. And so what we're laying out and making a recommendation to you, and which is attached to your handout, is this next slide. And this is our proposal that you move ahead with the 2% raise within the contract, but we also make some market adjustments. And I would point out to you that in the second column from the left, very top, it's 2% plus certain market adjustments. Those certain market adjustments would be for those promoted positions that are so far out of alignment that they need to be adjusted. And this is not to say that this fixes it all in one swoop. We're talking about a part of the process to get from point A to point B, which we hope you agree is necessary. I would also point out to you that this lays out the entire pay plan that we're going to recommend to you. In some cases, there are people who do not get that pay because they're not at that level. And so when it says there's no incumbent, even though it's an increased value, it doesn't cost you $1 because you don't have any of those. But in the future, it will. So we don't want to misrepresent it. So if there is a future promotion and the ripple effect comes up and everybody comes to different levels, you know, it may cost you another $1,800 tomorrow if you promoted somebody that wasn't formally there. But right now, for instance, like the lieutenant, all the lieutenants that are top out pay. And so if we raise the step level for a lieutenant for the future, it doesn't cost you $1 today. And so I would like to point that out because that's when I costed it out. If you didn't have, if you're not paying it today and it's not like you're gonna pay it in a minute, we gave you a base cost. And that's all relative to what your finance director will tell you. And so what you have before you and what we see on the screen is I would identify the market adjustment. What we tried to do is try to smooth the plan. If you look at in the officer level, we have taken the 10-year step. And just so there's no confusion, understand that officer 111 means there's 3 officers. That's a line. I did it by individual person. And so like when you look at officer 15, there is only 1 police officer in the department that get paid the top out pay salary level. And immediately beneath them, there are no incumbents for what we're recommending, which would be 13 years of service or 11. And there are people who are currently 10 years of service, which is under your current plan, and we're recommending a change. And what we're trying to do is the last 2 steps of your pay plan for officers represents a differential of 9.2%. We want to smooth that down at a time that no one's going to have to take a pay cut and then push us out so that it helps the funding mechanism to be as fundable as possible, but also takes into consideration these market adjustments. And like I said, since there's no incumbents, you know, but when there is one, you'll have to spend that much money, but it will be less than what it was. So we're trying to smooth this out. And that helps us at the top end as well. So we're telling you that you're going to give a 2% raise, as you've already said you appropriated. And then we're going to ask you to do a market adjustment of an additional 5% or 5% for the 4 corporals that exist now. And so the far right-hand column tells you what the increase is over what you have already budgeted. In my humble opinion, from the numbers that I put together based on what you did. The same thing goes with sergeant. Although there is no incumbents in some of the sergeant stuff, we want a pay plan that is in the, you know, the contract in the police department that they use in the future that is a progressive. Let's keep the carrot out front and make sure everybody, we don't want to lose anybody to lateral entry in another city. So we're setting this up. And so at the sergeant level, if we went back or if you look at one of the formulas, you'll know that the promotional beginning pay for a sergeant is exactly the top out pay for an officer. We think that's a problem. There's no pay difference. So you take a promotion and you might not get a pay raise that would make you higher than a police officer that you have to supervise and or the corporal. So we hope you acknowledge that that is not good logic. It's not good, you know, incentive. And if that's the case, and we don't have a disagreement about them, then I think we can work on what's the best, most cost-effective way to get from point A to point B, so that you can fund it, and it makes the chief have a more professional pay plan to offer people to come to work here. And also retention of his current staff. And so they won't be tempted to go somewhere else because they can get $1 an hour, right? So that's the premise that we're laying set before you. So as you can see, there is a cost, and if you compare it, and yours are side by side on this presentation here. So you could actually see it all across the page, if you will. And so, and I would draw your attention that what we're proposing, what we're laying up here, and now I'm showing it side by side for everyone to see, but yours is, your printed copy is probably easier to read than this here. And so when you look at these side by side, this is a best case estimate. Your current budget is going to be roughly for salary 2.833, and we're recommending changes. And if you would concur, we believe it would cost you totally 2.856. And so, like I said, understand, since there are no incumbents, even though there's a salary increase displayed to the right, you don't have to pay that because there's not going to be. Now, if you promote somebody a year from now, obviously you have to take that into consideration. So, and so basically we're looking at that difference in the neighborhood of $23,000.
John, let me just quick, make sure I understand this. We're talking about fixing the corporal issue right now.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sergeant's issue.
Well, sir,
That's going to be in the future, or is this correct?
well, we're taking one step
at a time
today.
Okay. I
Well, but
understand.
not 3 ranks at a time. I mean, not 3 separate ranks, 3 separate times. We're saying if we take this action today and we put $23,000 in addition, what we're doing, and it may be better if you look at this last page right here, because this will illustrate to you what we're recommending is to be paid. So,
Yeah, what I see, I mean, this debacle is happening everywhere I've been.
Yeah.
Where you got an officer at the top end is making more than a sergeant, sometimes even higher. But and that does get fixed, but it's years in fixing. What I'm hearing is it's going to be about 23,000 to fix the corporal issue right now.
it would, it's not, I'm not going to promote you if it fixes it entirely, because what I would point out to you is there's still an overlap. If you look at this pay chart,
Right.
this, if you adopted our philosophy, this is what you would have at the end. And so if you look at the top out pay for a police officer is under the new level. Well, a corporal's promotional pay would be lower and so forth. It would allow for progression. If you were a lower tenured officer and you took the test, you'd be promoted to the base corporal, which would be more. However, there is in your current contract says you have to get a raise to get promoted. We're refining that language a little bit, but because of that, some of the, like one officer, as an example, correct me if I'm wrong, he had, we'll say, 9 years of service on the department. You look at his charts, and they got promoted. And because the language said they had to get a raise, they promoted them to the next corporal rank, and it was a 16-cent an hour raise, which they did get a raise, but it wasn't comparable. So this is kind of, you have to look at them. It may slide this way.
But that's if it's fixed, what it would
Right.
be.
But it also creates a top out for corporal. So if you're 5 years in grade corporal, you're actually going to make a little bit more than a topped out police officer.
Right,
And that
about
would happen
1,000 more, so-
tomorrow if you adopted it.
But that's if we fix the corporals right now.
Well, it won't fix it all in one. I'm just saying that that
Eventually, they
one,
would like
the 5 year would be fixed.
This is our vision in the future.
Yeah.
This is the magic wand you'd like to have.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to promote to you that, let's say that it's going to have component parts.
Right.
And depending on your ability to fund, it may have more parts than we would suggest. But let's just say for a moment, we did it 2 steps.
Right.
The first step would be this year when you allocated an additional resource to take the first step at fixing it. What will happen is you're going to add a little more money to the corporate. we'll also maintain that same rule that you already have, that they're gonna get a raise of a minimum of 5% if they get promoted. So no matter where they are as a police officer with their tenure, if they take the corporal's test and promoted, they're gonna get a minimum of 5%. So they may not go to the promoted step at A step. They may go to the promoted step at C step. And I'll also point out to you that we had originally added another step, and I neglected to say, so it goes from A to C to D.
Okay.
We had one other step in there that we taken out, so I didn't modify and make sure it was 100%, but we're going back to the 3 step. And so let's assume for a moment, you're an officer with 9 years of service, and this is tomorrow after it's adopted. And you were making this amount of money, which was the 2% is already approved by council. And you took the test to become a corporal and you became promoted. Well, you would then go to the next level that gave you at least minimum raise, and that would be 72,000.
What I would say, you know, it's my thoughts. It sounds reasonable for the corporal, but can we finance it? And we've got Susie here, and that's the kind of stuff we need.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can say yes for everything. The mayor can. But can we fund it?
Yes, I believe you can, but I mean, that's a question for your finance director.
Yeah,
And
no.
Yeah. And so
She's listening, and I mean,
she can certainly weigh in, and that's kind of like if you guys take a caucus and you want to have her give you some input. We're certainly not trying to misrepresent any numbers, but there may be a little difference in her calculation and ours, but I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be drastic.
I'm all for fixing the whole shebang, but you know, it's like, do we have it? But you know, I think you're right. We need to go with an incremental fix because we got to figure out what we can afford.
Well, and I also promote to do, if you look at this new proposal, and it's dated at the top, so we're talking about today. For the sergeant, we made a differential so that sergeant promoted will make 80,000. So that's above both an officer and a corporal. Not in that 5 to 10% range that we'll promote to you that you should try to strive to get to, but that's going to be an opinion.
This dilemma happens even in corporations.
Yeah.
There are people that are moved to vice president and they're making less than one of the subordinates. Calvin knows that, you in the industry. It happens, and they fix it eventually, and I'd like to fix it. But I'd like to make sure we can afford.
Yes, sir.
Afford it. And Susie's got the information on it. And I don't know whether we need a caucus on this or come back and because we can't to make this decision right this instant. I don't think we can.
Yeah, no, we're gonna go ahead and caucus, but let's be clear. I think that what the Police Officers Association is suggesting is an additional roughly $25,000 because we had already allocated about 55,000 for our 2% across the board COLA for our officers. So we're talking about, and it's a large sum of money, you know, for all of us. But in the scheme of our budget, we're talking about $25,000 roughly, which is not as large as what we probably thought that this solution would be. So I'm excited about it, the opportunity to solve this issue today. But however, we do have to caucus because
I certainly understand that. And I'd also just one more, just make sure the chief understands on the new pay plan. So I said, this may not fix it all at one part, but what I have done, and because it was easier, and that's because you have no encumbrance. Okay. First of all your lieutenants are already being paid at the rate that the council has approved the funding for. So what we did is we came in for the promoted lieutenant step and we raised that. But since you have none, it costs zero today. Now, let's assume you have a retirement 6 months from now and you got to fill that. You may fill that position with, but you'll, as you see, if you dial out someone at a higher level, the fundability is better. So you aren't going to pay more money. You see what I'm saying? And if anybody wants to argue with that, argue it. But if you got a topped out lieutenant and they retire and you're paying them 95,000, and you're going to replace them with a lower tenured employee who their promoted step will become 91,000. That saves you money, but that's just by course of the way the system works. Okay? Yeah. So what we tried to do to make we created a differential so that the corporal is still the problem. Tomorrow when we're we haven't fixed the problem totally, but we've alleviated the problem with the sergeant and the lieutenants as best we could the first time around. Now, next contract go around where you talk about fixing the problem even more appropriately, you know, you're gonna have an HR director that wants to weigh in and tell you what she thinks and what she thinks best practice are. You're gonna have finance director. That's the process we go through. We understand that. We're trying to take little bites to try to resolve a problem that our member says is way out of whack. And I mean, it's just quite simple. If you look at who would vote for something, if it's not fixing your problem, you can count the numbers by name, to be honest with you. And so what we're trying to do is put our best foot forward to give you something that is entirely feasible, that you can fund for just a few dollars more, but it's an illustration to the members and everybody who has the problem that we're going in the right direction and we can live with that. And we can join with the city and try to resolve this problem piecemeal, if you will, because we know it's all about money. And we understand about, you know, Senate Bill 2 and everything else that goes along. It's going to be a struggle for not just this municipality, but all others. So
Yeah.
we want to join with you, put our best foot forward, try to resolve this in the best way we can. And so this is what we have put on the table. And I'd also kind of sum it up, think is this is probably the bare minimum for a first step, because, but you know, it's not giving everybody a 5% raise. It's only taking a market approach. So only those areas that have a market problem are we fixing or trying to take that first step.
Yeah, and it's my vision would be to get this thing fixed eventually, like you said, generally, that's gotta happen. And we're not the lone ranger on cities that, you know, this. Many sergeants are supervising officers making more than them, and that's not right. And I like to fix that. But we gotta make sure we got the money in the pot for that.
Well, we know how things happen here because you've got this body that works here. And so
Yeah.
they want to make sure that we don't lose the talent you've already trained and paid for.
Sure.
And the way you do that is, you know, no one got into our profession, as you well know, to be a millionaire.
Yep.
You know, it is, you know, officers who are dedicated to serve, but we have to, you know, feed our families and.
Patty, could you set up a meeting on this for appropriate people? Caucus on this?
Well, we're gonna
Well,
do it
we're
right
gonna
after
do
I
that.
this.
think
Oh, we are?
if y'all caucus and you
Yeah.
have your finance
You wanna-
director and she
Yeah.
can say John Kerr's numbers are off the wall, but you know,
Can
however it is, I know she has to be the one that puts the stamp of approval on the funding aspect
Sure.
because that's who you rely on.
Yeah.
So,
Kyle, can we get Susie over in the
Yeah.
conference room? Okay.
before we talked, we had a couple other options that we'd already previously talked about that I want to hand you. We don't have to talk about them. I'm just going to hand them to you. You can take them with you, but.
Sure.
Let's see if I got the right folder here. You gave us a counter offer with regards to the sworn signed statement.
Mhm.
We talked about the language. I just took the liberty to write it so that we got something to talk from. It's exactly what we talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah.
And, you know, I know that from the perspective of you being a city attorney, you're going to, I'm gonna put that over. You're gonna make sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed correctly, but I figure the closer we get to. You want to pass this on? Put it on the table today.
Thank you.
I don't think it hurt.
Yeah. I think it's.
And this is something we want to talk to you about. And as you know, we all agreed to the rules of bargaining. So today is the last day that our party can lay something new on the table without agreement. So we just want to throw something out to you and let you take a look at it. You know, doesn't cost anything, but it's just something that we wanted to talk to you about. And so, and we don't have to get a concurrence to do it later. So we're going to lay it on the table today and then open it up for discussion. But personally, I feel like we've come very, very close with a lot of the language aspects getting right where we need to be. But the larger issue is always going to be money. And so when you caucus, I would hope that y'all would, you know, look through all the considerations and then we can come back and you know, I'm hopeful that it's something that the finance director will tell you that is entirely, you know, possible, and then it will be a decision of you guys if you think it's something that you could recommend to the full, you know, body is being fundable and the right path to travel. So you have anything you want to?
Ready to caucus and
Okay, guys, it's 2:35. How about a 15-minute caucus? You think, guys? 20, 15, 20?
I would say, yeah, 2020.
Okay, it's 2:35. Let's plan on being back here at 3 o'clock. That'll give us a 5-minute break for those of us that need to hang outside for a minute. And 20 minutes to work. How about that?
sounds good.
Let's plan on returning at 3 o'clock.
And this one too.
Hello. We are back November 4th, about 3:15 PM. We are continuing our discussion, our negotiation with the Lamarque Police Officers Association. We have caucused here and we are about ready to respond to the proposals that the Lamarque Police Officers Association have made to us in our earlier session. And so we'll turn it back over to Mr. Knable.
So again, we appreciate the Lamarque Police Department or Police Department Association providing the proposed pay schedule. And I would ask that Mr. Kerr, if he could forward me the spreadsheet, I'll forward it on to our Ms. Koo, our financial director. But pending her confirmation of the numbers, we believe that proposal is something that we will accept and present to council with our recommendation that the council accept it. And again, we appreciate the Lamarque, Mr. Kerr's time and all of the union members' time in going through that and ensuring that all of the in submitting their pay stubs and all of the admin work that went along with that. Moving to the other two items that Mr. Kerr presented, the internal investigations. Our main statement there, or our main concern there, again, we're not the written statement and that it be signed by the complainant. That's not an issue. We would ask that the signature in front or in the presence of the receiving officer, that the receiving officer witnessing the signature, we would ask that be removed. The reason being, we believe that removing that would allow for either somebody's representative, while that person would have signed it, that person's lawyer, that person's family member, that sort of thing, they could present it to the internal affairs officer. And because just through no fault of anyone's own, sometimes going to the police department can be intimidating for some people. That, and we can propose language to that effect. Moving to the next one, the internal investigations. Just generally speaking, we understand, as we understand this section, is that the police department wishes, or the union wishes to have in the contract that management will not compel a police officer's testimony at a citizens oversight board. Conceptually speaking, let me take it back. Compel a police officer's testimony at a civilian oversight board for that police officer's actions, i.e., that civilian oversight board's review of that police officer's actions, whoever that officer may be. Conceptually speaking, that is not something that management is opposed to. Two things. One, and we will propose language to ensure that this is cleaned up, but management is going to want the right to continue to order investigations or order testimony be given or compel testimony to be given in internal investigations, and then independent investigations that would be conducted by trained, certified personnel, people with peace officer licenses. So not civilians per se. While they may not be sworn officer of the Lamarque Police Department, they are somebody who has a license from the state of Texas. Number one. And then number two, obviously and we don't think it reaches it, but obviously the grand jury process or a civil lawsuit that may occur, there could be subpoenas issued under either of those that would not actually be a subpoena coming from the city of Lamarque necessarily. It could be coming from the other side. So we would propose, or I will propose language to kind of clean that up. And then the other thing, and I just just so you hear it from us, and the mayor can definitely speak to this as well. We don't think it reaches this, but there is a civilian review of police policies in general, not something happened and we're reviewing that. That's not what we're talking about. But Chief Aragon has considered just a general, the police department has this policy, and have a civilian board come in, evaluate that policy. Chief Aragon, that board could consist of police officers as well. But that board would then make recommendations to Chief Aragon on the policies of the police department, not the, and again, I realize I'm being a little repetitive here, but I also understand the sensitivity of the subject. So I want to just make sure we're clear. It is not the actions themselves. It's not a post-action review of those actions. This is a preemptive measure. So, yeah, absolutely.
Because it might be something happened in the communities, in turmoil over it. And this board, like in other cities, would look at the policy that we have and maybe assist the PD in making it more reasonable or tweaking it. That's what that would be. There would be no compelled testimony. That's happening since George Floyd and nationally. And going back to what Gus said, like both the officers know that we're using the services of a retired chief. He's not a sworn officer unless I'm mistaken. I don't think he's a reserve officer, but he's retired from TMRS. And he's a legal contractor, and he does a good job. So that would be part of an IA. So there'd be compelled testimony. He's doing it for us, and hope that clarifies it.
Well, I don't want to beat this whole thing down, but let's make sure we're all on the same page. First of all, you don't have to have an itemized listing of all the things you talked about.
No, I just want to make sure conceptually before I start editing this, that you don't come back to me and say, that's not what I meant. So
to the chief's comment, he's already empowered by law to do those things without question, and we're not questioning that. As far as the other things you brought, those are without question. They are by law and same thing. And we all have the ministerial duty of following all those laws. But we also know that there's only one person that could order an investigation on a police officer that's employed by the city, and that's the chief of police. Now, he can be told to do that by the mayor, he can be told to do that by the council, be told to do that by the city manager. We don't have a problem with that. That's our system.
Right.
And I would say the ultimate civilian review boards is that elected council who has the constituency that they got to. And so you work for them, you work for the city manager. So we're not trying to cross that or cut it down or anything. We're just saying that we're trying to make sure that there's no future question in anyone's mind that you're empowered by the laws of the state of Texas and through the Civil Service Commission. It's your responsibility. If you choose as the chief of police, as the Texas Ranger, or the Gallatin Police Department, anyone else to do this, that's within your power, and you can compel. That is your right. That is your empowerment by statute. Sure. But what we want to make clear is, and policy review, it's already statutorily, you should be, and I don't want to say it like that. You have the authority, and I hope are doing exactly what you're talking about, because that is authorized to you by law. Up to and including, there's an academy advisory committee. If you have an academy, the state even mandates that they want you to have that input, all chiefs. So if you had an academy, you'd have to have one, but you don't have one. So we don't question that at all. I mean, we think that's healthy. We think that, everybody should weigh in and have but you're the master of ceremony when it comes to adopting a policy for your police department that represents the best actions of your department within public safety of this community. And we understand the buck stopped on you. We get that. We understand, like I said, statutorily, grand jury, DA's investigators, any other lawful investigation empowered by law, you can compel. We get that. We're just saying that there's a lot of communities now that are creating civilian oversight, which is within their power. And we don't disagree with that. But you can't then usurp the state law and federal law and or, the process. Because, if you don't do the right thing, I'm sure you've got the answer to your people. There is a level of accountability. And we expect to be accountable as officers to our chiefs, to our communities, and but it doesn't involve, someone deciding that by ordinance, we're gonna say you have to show up and you gotta tell them what happened.
That's what I have.
So from, and that's all we're trying to do, because we think it makes good sense, and just to make sure that that's on there, because we're trying to preserve your, what I won't say right, we're trying to preserve your empowerment
Mhm.
to run your department in context of how police investigate supposed to happen. And we'd urge you to do it. And we're in the business, I'm working lots of places and I've seen all over the state. And so I'm just trying to, and we've talked about this, just trying to make sure that you have the opportunity to put your best foot forward, work in the community, because that's what this is all about. We totally get it. So with that said, we'd love to see anything you got, but like I said, I hope we don't end up where it's, bullet points 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's not necessary.
No,
If you get a subpoena, you gotta respond to it when it involves any of the things that you and I know statutorily, and if you don't, there's a penalty to be paid for, not only from the chief, but the authority that issued the subpoena,
Right.
So,
right.
We're not trying to write anything out of that system. That is the law. And we're rule of law people. So
Okay.
as far as the just as a regular course of business, I'm curious, if I don't care who writes the statement in context, if you're my legal counsel and I'm asking for your citizenship, but you understand that if you sign it, you're making the statement, it's your statement.
Right.
That's why we think it's important that you sign the statement. And, so the part about being in front, that's why we kept that passage that said, so people don't want to come to the police department. We understand that. So the chief's assigned person to do the internal affairs, they can go meet them at their house. They can go meet them at the library, wherever they want to. If they don't want people to see the police car come to their house, we're good with all that. And that's in the contract. So basically where they sign it is probably more of the issue than if they sign it. And so we're just saying that's why we put it in, and we think it's important,
Well, we don't have a problem with them signing with us, with it being signed.
Right.
Our issue is where it is signed. And the issue is, or actually it's not even where it is signed. It's the signed in the presence of the officer. That's where we're coming from. And,
well, then,
because
I would think a good compromise might be, maybe it doesn't have to be, the IAD officer, but from a process standpoint, it needs to be an agent of the city. And I would think that, or else how do you know that it's legitimate and it's not, I can give you something that is signed and then later on say, well, I never said. You know what I'm saying? So that's.
I mean, you could, but I understand where you're coming from there. I do, but I mean, I sign checks all the time, and I don't sign them in front of anyone, but they're presented to the bank and they're my signature. I mean, I can definitely talk. The team and I can talk about maybe signing it in front of the city clerk, no, not notarized.
Well, it's not a, we've already got past the notarization and the swearing and all that. I just think it's incumbent on someone, if they want to have the information processed and moved on in the form of blank, that they're willing to sign it. And
no problem.
Systematically, the reason to sign it in front of a person has to do with, it wasn't your twin brother that signed it. Now, let me tell you what. I have been in court. I've had the twin brothers show up and say, officer, can you identify the person that you arrested? And they look identical. So the games are played. We're just saying, we have a system and these officers do this day to day, and so that was our only consideration. And I don't see a problem with you know, if it's signed and it's purported to be signed by them, I guess. You know, we would, you know, before we, you know, you can offer a language, but before we would commit to that, we want to make sure that we all are in concurrence with that. too.
John, when the IA takes place, the IA officer always contacts the complainant to make sure it's, you know, to talk to them.
Right.
The preliminary kind of work. They're gonna make sure it's the, you know, not the twin brother, you know, by doing that. So that happens, that's automatic. That's why I'm saying, we're saying, you know, it's gonna be proven who the complainant is. They do that automatically. They don't just, you know, do it on the phone as far as the investigation.
Right.
They'll bring him in and, you know, who you are and make sure there's so did you sign this? You know, you got proof of who you are. That happens.
Right.
So we're just trying to make it streamline it a little bit. That's all.
I'm good with that. I'm just saying that, well, you've been a police officer your entire career, I assume, and you
Yeah.
understand the principles of what we do and why we do it. And I don't know.
I don't think it'd be.
Like I said, we're trying to cover our bases. So
If
once
you
I
write
talk to
something
the guy,
like
there
that,
may be no issue
you don't-
whatsoever.
Yeah, because we don't accept the complaints over the mail. So if I'm already meeting with them to take the complaint packet, then the process is already streamlined because I'm already meeting with them. So to me, if they sign the complaint in front of me whenever I pick it up,
Right, but
Even
I,
or they
to
drop
the
it off.
degree, if you're from New York City and you've landed in Houston and you went fishing the Galveston Island and you're way back, you were accosted by a police officer who you felt like was disrespectful and you sent that statement back and you signed it, I don't think we got a problem with that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because you're back in New York City. It's an issue that you want to address and you think it's, you know, purview of the chief and you might want to say, I got no problem with that. But like I said, in the normal course of business, if you're doing anything USA, you know, like I said, you talk about the check, but you also know when your bank says, here's the check, and you say, I didn't sign it, and you sign that affidavit, they put it back in your account too. So that's the King's X. And what we're saying is there's no King's X unless there's an agent of the city. I'll just say it like that. It doesn't have to be a police officer. It's just that's our consideration. It makes it a valid complaint that someone else didn't, you know, con you into doing it for the wrong reason and wrote it all up for you, and then you just signed it because that's what we told them to. And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, many times in investigation, we're the ones that take everything that they say and write it into the statement and then say, read this, and is this what you said? They say, yes, that's it. And they sign it, life goes on. And so that's our perspective. There's nothing Machiavellian about this. There's nothing to try to create some kind of an error. It's just that, you know, this is America, you know what I'm saying? I don't think the city is going to, I have no doubt that you as the chief of police receiving a complaint will leave no stone unturned to do a full and complete and fair investigation.
Mhm.
And that's a norm. A lot of people may not think that, but you know, and I know that's the police culture and that's what we do.
Mhm.
And so, you know, it's really, you know, as you well know, I guess someone can complain to you personally, and if that raises your attention bar, you're gonna talk to the supervisor and say, I want you to start paying attention, you know? So it doesn't have to be written, you know what I'm saying? The chief and or lieutenant for that matter. You know, if you receive information, somebody's not doing something exactly right, you're concerned about it. You do what you do. That's our lot. So we're good with that. We just like to see that, you know, whether the location it's signed out, it's not material. It's just, if you're going to be the person doing the investigations, like I said, I want to know you're the one that's making the complaint, you signed it, and we don't expend a lot of time and effort for somebody else's idea.
and so you're good, you would be good with an agent of the city, not necessarily a police officer.
Yeah. I think
Witness.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something along those lines. You see where we're coming.
Yeah,
from.
no, I do.
You know,
Yeah.
So they would sign it.
Yeah.
They
I
would sign
understand.
it, and the person that's witness that works for the city would sign their name and print their name and sign it. Then you print it and sign it. Like, it'd be anybody that works for the city.
Well, let me go like this. If you're called to testify and you say, I witnessed John Kerr signing that document, that's good for John
Okay.
Kerr, you know what I'm saying? And the other aspect is, and I think we kind of glanced over this, we're talking about serious violations of criminal activity. We're not talking about minor complaints. We're not talking about violations of the police department policy that chiefs have purview over at all times. He needs no signed complaint to do those things. We know that and we agree. But when you're talking about serious misconduct or criminal activity, I think you don't want anything less than a signed statement.
John,
Sworn and all that stuff, that's the old days, let's be honest.
I think we required it. If a person wants to file a complaint, they used to be notarized for everything, any type of complaint. We don't just do it for serious misconduct, if I'm not mistaken. So Mary Jane comes in and has a complaint, she fills out a complaint form, and it used to be.
Correct. It's one complaint package
It's not
for
just
every
for serious
complaint.
misconduct, you know what I'm saying? So.
Well, but sir, I'm saying in the contract, it says if it is a complaint, then that's what invokes I would say the responsibility on the city's part and or your part, that the statement that they give is reduced to writing and is a sworn affidavit.
I think we do everything that way, all complaints.
Well, I think I don't know if you have them notarized and all that. I don't think, one of minor complaint, if somebody's willing, as you well know, if they're willing to put it right, it's a real deal.
We've been doing it for.
But but
doesn't
that's
matter.
within your purview, and you can decide tomorrow that part doesn't have to happen anymore. It could happen, but we're talking about the only thing that rose to the occasion of concern for the officers ever was, if someone comes in and makes a criminal allegation against you, it should be the real deal. Or something that would result in obvious termination if you partook in it.
I think we would do it for everything. Like person comes in and they got a complaint about an officer
Right.
allegedly becoming impolite.
Right.
They've been doing it. It's the same form.
Yeah.
But we know what you
Yeah.
mean.
Well, I said there's a big difference between a sworn affidavit and a signed complaint. So we're not trying to run this together.
So now my assistant.
That might be an impediment to someone wanting to come to the police department and do all these things, just to tell you that they were discouraged.
Right now,
And you're very concerned about those, every situation.
my admin assistant, Sloan, if she meets the person in the lobby, she could be witnessing under this system, right?
Well, if we put an agent of the city, it could be anybody. It
Yeah.
could be the city receptionist. There's a guy in Public Works, digging a ditch, he can sign it because he's agent of the
We'll have
city
to
and he will
revise
be
the
valid.
form, that's all.
Well, we'll trust that you get the right scenario.
Sounds good.
Maybe they don't come to the police department, maybe they come to City Hall, that doesn't.
Yeah, we internally
It's
can
all
work on that.
convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Change the form.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, that's all we had. Anything else? If you can just email me the spreadsheet.
I'll
Yeah, not
Uh,
obviously, if we need to get a chance.
there's nothing that's a secret. I use a lot of modeling techniques. And
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. So it may be easier for me just to send it all to you.
That's fine.
And, HR and finance, they'll understand my methodology. You're trying to look at scenarios, the cost, and like I said, you might have one on there that was costing out of $218,000. I said, oh, that's not the work.
Right.
But I'm not gonna go through it because it takes too much time sometimes to break all these things apart. I'm just gonna send you what we got.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
It's all, but how would you propose that we move forward? Because I anticipate that we're right at that juncture where we can probably,
Thank you.
start getting TAs on individual parts, or we can do it all at one time. I don't think we're that far apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think truthfully, we probably do it all next meeting. It sounds like we're all, assuming the numbers check out, which I have no reason to believe they won't. The next meeting, I'll have some minor changes to the internal investigations. I will make the change that we tentatively have agreed on about the agent of the city. And then assuming, again, the money checks out, we can just do it all then.
Well, I would anticipate that we're no longer negotiating, that we're trying to clean up the language and make sure that there's a meeting of the minds about what we said.
That's
So
fair.
Correct.
Would you see it any different?
No, I would.
Would it be expeditious to value everyone's time and make sure that maybe you and I pass back the language to get it refined out? Anything that is required to be done in public, I certainly want to do that.
Right.
But we're
Yeah.
talking about legalese, possibly that you may be the resident authority on, and we may not question that. It's just.
Oh, well, y'all can question me. That's
Well,
fine. People question me all the time.
We're not gonna be negotiating any longer.
Right.
You're gonna come back and tell us if you think you can fund and or if you think that because you have to ratify this agreement as well. And that's
Right.
not just the people sitting at this table, we realize that.
Right.
And then, but this will give us time, I think, if we pass this back and forth, and the next time we actually set a meeting, we could come in here and basically check off and do it and everything, and then we could move forward with ratification, and then y'all can prepare as well. So 'cause
Yeah.
we anticipate at this juncture, and slap me in the head if I'm wrong, that we think we're close. So
Yeah, no, we agree. Yeah, we appreciate everyone's time.
After we ratify it
Yeah.
and the LMPA ratifies it. So I would say December.
well, then.
We would probably be able to get this on our December meeting.
Since we're talking about that stuff too, and it will come up, normally the budget runs from, October the 1st, so it would be our preference that, once we adopt the agreement that we have back pay, but that's that's a point of negotiation, I guess, so we probably should discuss that now. You've already voted in the budget, so I'm not. I think come up with new money, but.
Yeah, the 2%, I don't see that being an issue.
Yeah.
We'll need to run the money on
Well, I'm
the.
saying, assuming that we're all in agreement that I've costed this out and it is what it's saying.
It-
It's more
And
about when it goes into effect, because that's something every member is gonna ask us about. Well,
Can-
hey, everybody else got the raise on October 1st. What about that?
well, the 2% is October 1.
Yeah,
Now-
y'all should have got that, yeah.
So
Now,
market adjustment,
Now, the market adjustment. And
that needs to go in effect, in our opinion, once we could go in earlier, but not later.
So it's-
right, yeah, go in effect with ratification. Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that we wouldn't want to prorate it out to next year. You see what I'm saying? A pretty
Yeah.
contract that goes in effect April 1st.
No, it'd go in effect with ratification.
With ratification, yeah,
Yeah.
and we would even go a step further and ask Susie, because you're talking about 20, if the numbers are correct, we're talking about $25,000, which is roughly about $2,000 a month. So you're looking at October, November. So you're looking at roughly about 4,000. We can ask Susie. We can ask our finance director if
Well,
in
I
fact,
just want to
you
make sure
know,
we're on the same page. 'Cause
Yeah.
These things come up at that last meeting, so, oh, we forgot that. So I'm just saying that,
And
because there's all kinds of ways you fix it. You know what I'm saying?
and I guess because Susie will probably ask us, so I'll ask you right now. The proposal that you with the spreadsheet, is that for extra money from today? Or is that extra money for the entire budget year? Does that make sense? Because I can rephrase it.
Well, be very specific, so I
Sure,
understand. 'Cause when you
Sure.
say-
So the city's proposal came out to 2.8, and sorry, I circled through some stuff. So if I get a number, roughly $2.833 million in payroll costs for the police. The police union's proposal came out to 2.856, so round numbers, $23,000 extra. Is that $23,000 extra from this proposal is dated 11/4? Is that for 11/4 through the rest of the budget year? Or is that $23,000 the
It was
difference?
from October the 1st.
Okay,
So.
Okay.
The dates at the top was just for me to keep, we had meetings, I want to make sure.
so
that
this 23,
chronologically, you don't get the same copy with the wrong numbers. So
Right.
it was The first meeting we had, September the
Right.
28th, as opposed to today.
right, so.
Because this evolved.
Yeah, so this 23,000 number,
If
let's
we did
assume
it October the 1st.
hypothetically, we did this 5 months ago.
Right.
This $23,000 number would be the total amount extra for the budget year.
It's
Okay.
backdated to October 1st with everybody's current salary rate.
Okay, so that would
Off of, or the salary up to 11/4. If anybody's
right,
took a step, today, then that's.
Well, I want to say that because we parlayed those numbers with membership and all that over a week ago.
okay,
So if someone actually had an anniversary day, you may have already given them a raise.
right.
But, which wouldn't have gone in effect yet because it'd be on their next pay period. So I'm
Right.
saying, but what we
Right.
did, we costed this out as though October the 1st was D-Day.
Yeah, that was my question. I wanted to make sure it wasn't costed, because if we're talking about back pay, costed it out that it's not
It's for October
from
1st.
today, but
Right.
it's from, so
And-
that helps. Thank
and,
you.
You know, your council, your finance director, you all budgeted the money that you had to have by
Right.
law. And
Right.
so you absolutely today have salary savings for all the vacant positions you have. And that was also our consideration because, you might want to spend that money somewhere else, but you could spend it for that first step to resolve the problem. That was part of our thinking. So, but it represents new money next year, absolutely. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's the way, that's the logic I use. So we just want to make sure we're clear. I mean, if I don't know what payroll system you use, I don't know how hard it is to back pay people, how long it takes, all that stuff. Those are questions that y'all probably have to find out about as well. So
Yeah.
But we'll take the $500 gift card.
Well, in that case, how about an Amazon one?
Well, pretty soon we'll be paying a Bitcoin.
Well. Okay. So then John, you and I will trade legalese with each other. And if you can send me the
I'm
Excel
assuming you
sheet.
have a master copy. I do, but I'm sure you want to work off of yours.
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing. So there's only one copy floating around there.
I agree. Yeah.
You could cut paste as well as anyone, I'm sure. So,
Right.
Also, these are negotiations earlier we talked about.
Next year,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I've talked to these guys about. We're mindful of the fact that you've had some vacancies and positions that will be, well, we're on our 4th president since we started this, so.
Wow.
But he's gonna be here to stay, and he's interested in trying to move forward, and be pertinent in the budget process, not after the budget's already been decided next time. So, and work with the chief and try to find out what's feasible, and, keep your ear to the pavement and be responsive to the community and to the council. So that's where we're coming from.
Okay. Well,
Good.
That's a wrap.
yeah, I think that's
Good.
all.
So next meeting, are we scheduling the next meeting now? Or are you?
I mean, I don't, maybe, I mean, if do you want to schedule a meeting? I would say probably 2 weeks. That gives,
Yeah, I think it's always best to set a date. That way we can
Right.
work to it. We can always cancel if we're not ready, but
yeah.
if, I know it works that way for me, and I'm assuming, who knows what days you got to be in hearings and courts and things like that. But
So 2 weeks from today is the
18.
18th?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and if we got, and the other side of this, Mayor, is if we got this really, really close and we got it laid in front of us and there's one word that needs to be scratched out.
We could do it
scratch
then,
out the
yeah.
initial, and that becomes the deal. So it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
100% in its entirety exactly right. We can fix it, but you want it to all be very legible as much as we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants to be trying to decipher my handwriting.
What, same time?
1:30?
1:30?
Whatever is good with y'all guys.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're gonna do 18 at 1:30.
November 18th, 1:30, yes.
Okay.
We good to go?
Yep, we're good.
All right, guys, thank y'all.
Thank you.
See y'all next time.